It's late. The house is quiet. You did the thing that you were supposed to do. You finished the work, you had the conversation, you turned off the light. And then your brain says, let's watch that again. The comment that you made in the meeting, the tone that you used with your kid, the thing that you should have said, or the thing that you wish you hadn't. And you're not just remembering it, you're rerunning it, frame by frame, looking for the edit that would have made it come out clean. Here's the strange part. You're an intelligent, capable adult. You solve real problems all day. And yet, on this one thing, you're completely powerless. You've told yourself to let it go 100 times, and the loop just starts again. So today, I want to answer the question you probably typed into a search bar at midnight. Why can't I stop replaying this in my head? What is my mind actually trying to do? And is there a way out that isn't just white knuckling myself into stop thinking about it, which if you've ever tried it, you know it doesn't work. There's a real answer. It's more useful than let it go. And it starts with understanding that this loop is not a malfunction. It's your mind doing something on your behalf, just doing it badly. I'm Brett Ingram, and this is optYOUmize, a show built on one idea. Real optimization isn't about squeezing more out of your day. It's about building a life that's actually yours. Let's get into it. Okay, so the replay, the mental instant replay booth that seems to switch on the moment that you have nothing else to hold your attention. I want to be clear about who this one is for. This isn't for the occasional oof, that was awkward, that fades by lunch. This is for that loop that follows you into the shower, onto the drive, into the bed, long after the moment itself is dead and buried. If you know that loop, you're in the right place. We're going to do three things. We're going to name what's really happening when your mind does this. We're going to take apart the advice that you've been given about it because most of it quietly makes it worse. And then we're going to build something that you can actually use the next time that booth lights up. So let's start with what's going on under the hood. Let's name the thing precisely because the name matters. Psychologists have a word for this specific mental move. It's called rumination, and it has a fairly exact definition. Rumination is the habit of responding to distress by turning the same thoughts over and over, replaying the causes, the meaning, the what ifs, without moving toward actually resolving anything. That last part is the whole trick, without moving toward resolving anything. So the challenge here, and the reason it's a problem, is because it feels productive. We think we're processing it as we keep replaying it. So it feels like we're working the problem, but what you notice is that you never actually arrive anywhere. You've watched the footage 40 times and you have exactly zero new information. I think of the movie Fever Pitch with Jimmy Fallon. And when he's in a really bad situation and he and Lindsay break up, he's a big Red Sox fan. And he sits there and he watches the Buckner moment where they lost to the Mets over and over and over again. And he just keeps watching it. He isn't processing anything. He's dwelling on it. He's living in the moment in a terrible place. And it makes it really hard to get out of it. So for us, it might be more like we send a text and then the person takes a few hours to reply. So in those few hours, we're thinking, oh no, they must have already gotten it and seen it. So what did I do wrong? What did I say wrong? What was wrong in my tone? How did they take this? What are they thinking? And we play out the worst possible scenario when we don't even really know what the situation is. So maybe there was a conversation or a moment that we looped for on far longer than it deserved. And that is where it's not effective or helpful. So the important thing to know here, though, is if this happens to you, you're not broken. This has a name and it's incredibly common. So what's the one that you keep replaying right now? Just notice it. We'll come back to it. So here's a number that reframes how normal this is. In a well-known Harvard study, researchers pinged thousands of people at random moments and asked what they were doing and what they were thinking about. People's minds were somewhere other than the present moment nearly half of the waking hours, about 47% of the time. And the kicker, people were reliably less happy when their minds wandered, even when they wandered to pleasant things. The wandering seemed to cause the dip in mood, not the other way around. So the replay isn't some private flaw that you carry. Wandering off into what is not happening is one of the most human things your brain does. The question isn't how to become a person whose mind never drifts. It's what to do when the drift turns into a loop. So why does the mind do this? Why get stuck? The most useful way that I've found to think about it is this. Your mind loops on things that feel unfinished and unsafe at the same time. So unfinished meaning that there's no clean resolution. The conversation ended in a weird place. The outcome's still unknown. The wound is still open. And unsafe, meaning something that you care about might be at stake. You're standing with somebody. Your sense of yourself as competent or kind or good. So when you put those two together, unfinished and unsafe, and your mind does exactly what it was built to do with a threat. It keeps it active. It refuses to file it away because filing it away feels like giving up on protecting you. So the loop, it's important to understand, is not your mind attacking you. It's your mind guarding you. It's the overzealous security guard who won't stop rattling the same door because it can't confirm the door is locked. So notice how much of what we replay is social, has to do with us and other people. It's rarely a spreadsheet error. It's usually a conversation, a look, a comment. And that isn't random because we're wired to track our standing in the group because for most of our history, belonging was survival. So maybe you'll replay that slightly off thing that you said to a friend for a week and completely forget the actual mistake that you made in a report by Friday. Because that social one feels more dangerous because an old part of your brain, it is. So when you look at your loop, is it about a task or is it about a person and where you stand with them? Because for most people, it's the second. But here's the cruel twist, and it's backed by decades of research. The late Yale psychologist Susan Nolan Huxma spent her career studying rumination. And one of her clearest findings was that rumination doesn't just fail to solve the problem. It actively impairs your ability to solve it. It muddles your thinking. It makes you more pessimistic about your options. And over time, it quietly erodes the very relationships that you're looping about because you withdraw into your head instead of turning toward the person. So the replay makes a promise that it can't keep. It says, stay here with me and we'll figure this out. But the staying is the thing that keeps you from figuring it out. That's the trap that we have to get out of. Now the advice. If you've ever admitted to someone that you can't stop replaying something, you've heard the two standard prescriptions. One, somebody will tell you, just stop overthinking it. Or two, maybe just think positively. I want to gently take both of these apart because they don't just fail, they actually backfire. When we talk about just stop overthinking, yeah, it's great advice, except that telling a ruminating brain to stop overthinking is a little bit like telling someone who can't sleep to just relax. If they could, they would. The instruction adds a second layer. Now you're overthinking and failing at not overthinking. When we try to just think positively, right, pasting a bright thought over a loud fear doesn't remove the fear. It just makes you feel like it shouldn't be there, which adds shame on top of the anxiety. Now you're anxious about being anxious. So the research is coming about how powerful this is and how important it is, because there's actually a famous experiment about why suppression fails. So if forcing yourself to stop hasn't worked, it's not because you're weak, it's because forcing is the wrong tool. So back in the 1980s, the psychologist Daniel Wagner ran a now famous experiment. He gave people one instruction. For the next 5 minutes, don't think about a white bear. Ring a bell every time you do. Well, you can guess what happened. People rang that bell constantly. And then, and this is the important part, when he later let them think freely, the group that had been suppressing thought about the white bear more than the people who'd never been told to avoid it. Wagner called it the ironic process of mental control. To not think about something, part of your mind has to keep checking whether you're thinking about it, which means part of your mind has to keep the thing alive. Sit with what that means for the replay. Every time you grit your teeth and command yourself to stop thinking about that conversation, you're actually assigning a part of your brain to monitor for the conversation. You're not closing the loop, you're deputizing it. So suppression is out. The answer isn't to push harder against the thought. It's to change your relationship to it entirely. Here's the reframe I want to leave you with, and it's the heart of the whole episode. Your rumination is misdirected care. It's care, real care, about something that genuinely matters to you, pointed at a problem that it can't solve in the place it's trying to solve it. The 2 a.m. replay is not you failing to move on. It's love or fear or maybe responsibility with nowhere to go. And the work is not to kill that care. The work is to give it somewhere to actually go. Now, when we think about this, we're not trying to become people who don't care what we said or how it landed. That person isn't enlightened. They're just checked out. And that's not the same thing, because the goal here is not detachment, it's direction. And this is the whole brand in one line. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the answer to a mind stuck in overdrive is almost never care less. It's care on purpose and give the caring a channel. So if suppression doesn't work and caring isn't the enemy, then what do you actually do at 2 a.m.? That's what I want to hand you now. And it's not a formula, it's a set of moves that you can adapt. So what if the loop isn't a problem to eliminate, but a signal to redirect? I'm going to give you 3 moves. They're not a 5-step morning routine, and they're not magic. They're a way to meet the loop when it shows up, and you'll bend them to fit in your own head. The first one changes your distance from the thought. The second one asks what it wants. The third one gives that want a way out. So move number 1, name the loop and step back from it. The single most important distinction in this whole episode is the difference between a loop and a lesson. A lesson has an endpoint. You learn the thing and the thinking is done. A loop has no endpoint. You circle the same ground and arrive nowhere. Same footage again and again. So the first move is to catch yourself and name it, literally. This is a loop, not a lesson. And then create a little distance from it. So when we think about this in practice, what we want to do is, instead of saying to ourselves, why did I say that? And keep playing it over so our mind comes up with all things that are irrational about reasons we did it, try talking to yourself the way that you talk to a friend. And use your own name or you in the sentence. So Brett, you're replaying this again. This is the loop. That's identifying it. Because Ethan Cross, a researcher at the University of Michigan who wrote a book called Chatter, has studied this. Using your own name or you instead of I, he calls it distance self-talk, creates just enough psychological space to take the heat out of the thought. In his studies, it lowered people's distress and helped them see the situation more clearly. A second distancing tool from the same research, temporal distance. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years, 5 months? Will the other person even remember it? Usually the honest answer shrinks the thing considerably. The goal of move 1 isn't to solve anything yet. It's to stop being inside the loop and start standing next to it. You can't work with something that you're drowning in. Move 2, ask the one honest question. Is this an action or a feeling? Once you got a little distance, ask the loop what it actually wants. And there are really only 2 answers. Either there's a genuine action hiding in here, something that you actually need to do or say, or there isn't. And what's really running is a feeling that you haven't let yourself feel. Those 2 need completely opposite responses, and confusing them is why the loop never ends. If it's an action, you owe somebody an apology, you need to clarify something, you need to make a decision, then the loop is a reminder that's lost its off switch. The move is to write the action down or take the smallest possible version of it. The moment that there's a plan, the guard can stand down. So if you think about it this way, I'll text her in the morning and clear it up. And watch how much of the 2 a.m. charge drains out once that's decided. You'll see that that takes a lot of the power of it. If it's a feeling, embarrassment, grief, fear that you're not who you want to be, then there is no action. And that's exactly why thinking isn't going to close it. You can't think your way out of a feeling that just needs to be felt. The move is to name the feeling and let it be there. I'm not solving a problem. I'm embarrassed. That's what this is. The key to this is that most people run the wrong protocol. They try to feel their way through an action. endless emotional processing of something that just needs a 2-line email, or they try to solve a feeling, building action plans for something that just needed to be grieved. Match the response to the type. So here's a question for you. When you ask your loop, action or feeling, which one is it? Be honest, because it's often the harder one. Move 3. Give it a channel out of your head. This is the one people skip, and it's the one that works. The loop lives in your head because you've kept it in your head. So the last move is to root it somewhere external, out of the closed circuit and into the open air. So you could say it to a person, not to fix it, just say it out loud to someone that you trust. Because if we remember the researchers' finding about rumination, it makes us withdraw. And the withdrawal is what makes it worse. If we say, hey, I've been chewing on this thing that I said to you, and we do that to a friend, it breaks the exact isolation that the loop feeds on, and it moves toward resolution. We could write it down. If we get it out of the swirl and onto a page where it has to become specific, and specific is smaller than vague dread in your head. So a journal or a notes app, the back of an envelope. Move your body, a walk, a workout, anything physical. This is the one that really helps because it's once we start to move our mind and our body, they're connected to each other. So movement or creative work helps us with a genuine connection. Tie the bow. These aren't distractions from the problem. They're the actual off-ramp. The care needed a channel. You just gave it one. So these are super important things to do anytime we find ourselves in that situation. So it's 3 moves: step back from the loop, ask it whether it wants an action or a feeling, and answer accordingly. Then give it a channel out of your head, not a formula to run in order every time. A set of tools that you reach to depending on what the loop is made of. So maybe you have a slightly tense exchange with a colleague or a friend, and it's bothering you. So what we would do in that case is we'd step back and we'd say to ourselves, you're looping on this again. Will it matter in a month? And then we need to think about, is it an action or a feeling? Maybe a small action, maybe a light clarifying message to that friend just to say, hey, I didn't feel good about the way our last interaction ended. Or maybe it's just a feeling. We don't like feeling misunderstood. And so because we feel like that might have happened, that's what's making us sit with it. And then we want to channel it. We could send the 2-line text, we could tell our partner, or we could take a walk. So it's super important that you internalize these and use them when you feel yourself in that situation so you can break that loop. Because we're talking about a shift here. We're not talking about making thoughts vanish forever, but we want that charge to come down and we want to get our evening back. Now, I want to be honest about the limits of what we're talking about because this matters too. Everything I've described is for ordinary rumination. Loops that come with being a thoughtful person who cares about how they show up in the world, but sometimes the replay is something more. If the looping is relentless, if it's tied to a trauma that you keep reliving, if the thoughts feel intrusive and frightening and won't respond to any of this, or if it's pulling you into a darkness that's hard to climb out of, that's not a willpower gap and it's not something a podcast framework is meant to fix. That's a sign to talk to a real professional. And reaching for that help is one of the more self-respecting things a person can do. And one more honest limit in the other direction. Sometimes the loop is right. Sometimes you keep replaying a conversation because there genuinely is something you need to say, and you've been avoiding it. In that case, the loop isn't malfunctioning, it's a messenger. The framework still works. You just find when you ask action or feeling that the answer is a real action that you've been ducking. The way out is through the conversation, not around it. So here's the practice. I call it the 2 a.m. reset, and it's built to be done in your head in the dark with no journal and no app, if that's all you've got. Next time that you catch the replay running, do 3 quick things. First, name it and step back. Say it in your own name. You're looping again. This is a loop, not a lesson. Second, ask the one question. Is there a real action here, or is this a feeling asking to be felt? If it's an action, decide the smallest next step and tell yourself when you'll take it. If it's a feeling, name the feeling and let it be there without trying to solve it. Third, pick one channel for tomorrow, just one. Tell one person, write one page, or take one walk. This is supposed to be low pressure, and it's designed to do that on purpose. So if all you do is catch the loop and name it loop, not lesson, that alone is a win. Celebrate that. Feel good about it. The rest is optional. And you may find that writing is a better option for you than thinking, and that's fine as well. Whatever works for you is what is most important, because this isn't about never replaying anything again. It's about not being trapped by it, and that's a big difference. So let's go back to where we started. It's late, the house is quiet, and your brain cues up the footage one more time. Here's what I hope is different now. You know what that loop actually is. It's not proof that you're broken, and it's not a problem to be crushed with willpower. It's care, real care, about something that genuinely matters, knocking on a door it can't open by knocking harder. So you don't have to fight it. You just have to answer it. Step back far enough to see it, ask it whether it wants an action or a feeling, and give it away out of your head and into your actual life. Here's the one thing I'd love you to carry out of this episode. The next time your mind starts the replay, don't ask, how do I make this stop? Ask, what is this trying to take care of, and where can that go instead? The loop is not your enemy. It's just lost. Your job isn't to silence it. It's to show it the door. If this episode sparks something for you, subscribe for more, share it with a friend, and leave a rating and review so it helps us reach more optimizers like you. Until next time, remember, optimize your life, not just your output.